Well, alright. It has been a week since the release of Monster Hunter Rise's Master Rank expansion, and the journey through going this DLC has been an incredible ride. As of the making of this video, I have not yet uploaded all the parts for my Let's Play series on this game. However, I am almost done recording all of the content that this DLC has to offer, and of course there will be more frequent uploads in the coming future. Now in this video, I will be discussing my thoughts on Sunbreak, what I love about the DLC, as well as pointing out what surprised me the most during my playthrough. But please don't leave yourself out of the discussion. Let us know about your opinions and experiences with Sunbreak in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, a like would be much appreciated. So with that out of the way, let's go through the things that this DLC got right in my opinion. Starting with the feeling of groundedness with the DLC. In base Rise, a prevalent problem with the game was with the overall emphasis on the Rampage gimmick. I've already said this before in a previous video, but to reiterate, the Rampage story arc for Rise has felt a bit forced and unnecessary for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, there is a point here and there with the Rampages whilst playing Rise, such as unlocking the individual quests for the Apexes, and the Defender tickets needed to craft layered armor. So it isn't technically a useless feature to Rise, but with the release of the Elder Dragons in the title updates and the more challenging emergency quests, the Rampage feature for Rise is pretty much done and dusted. Now, with regards to Sunbreak, I am pleased to say that there are no more gimmicks to go through like the Rampage. This expansion is as straightforward and normal as it gets when it comes to the missions you go through. Plus with the added bonus that you won't be needing to go through a special assignment when unlocking some features. For example, this expansion's equivalent to the Apex monsters, now called the Afflicted monsters, only need you to complete the main storyline to unlock the quests. In Rise, you can give your weapon special attributes with the mentioned Defender tickets in the form of ramp-up skills. Sunbreak's equivalent to this comes in the form of Rampage skills, which essentially functions the same way as the ramp-up skills. Except all you need now are just Master Rank materials that you can obtain while doing normal quests. All in all, most of the features that you can do during Rise has now been streamlined and is more accessible just by playing the game normally. Moving on to the next point is the overall quality of the roster that we have been giving for this expansion. My goodness, I can still remember everyone worrying about the roster for being too short upon release. And if I can recall, this DLC is just 10 monsters short of Iceborne's roster, but regardless, the developers have done a tremendous job in implementing what new monsters we have been given, while incorporating the monsters that we have already fought in the base game. With each urgent quest that may include a new monster to fight, you will have to go through 2 or 3 quests that includes a monster that you've already fought, but in their G rank forms. Each of these old monsters hit harder, have new attacks and abilities, and of course possesses new armor and weapons to craft. So overall, you are not left with repeating the same old fights in a new expansion, but going into a quest with what you already know whilst keeping an eye on what's new. And when you do finally encounter the new entries to the game, the anticipation and excitement in reaching that point feels well deserved. Of course, I have not showcased these new fights yet in my Let's Play series, but each and every new encounter for me was fantastic. From the Astalos to the Shigara Magala and Aspinas in particular, which is right now my favorite monster to fight, and surprisingly even the new subspecies which I felt a bit iffy during their reveal. And yes, that includes the Magma Almudron, which I cannot wait to show you all when I get to uploading that fight. Each of these new entries are spaced out perfectly so you're not left with all the new monsters being lined up for you, and instead you're given a good opportunity to experience what's new and updated with the entries you've already fought in Rise. Now let's focus on the actual monsters you get to fight. Genuinely, from the easiest fight at the start with the Daimyo Hermitor to the final boss battle with Geismagor, each new quest just oozes with quality. And most importantly, a good challenge. Obviously, since this is G rank, most of the new fights come with their own unique hurdles to go through. From the Seregios' quickness and its use of the bleed ailment, to the flagship of the DLC in Malzeno finally giving a fairer but still challenging fight when we get to him. And speaking of Malzeno, the 3 lords and the final storyline bosses are the only new non-subspecies monsters included in the game, and all 4 of them are just perfect. At first, I was a bit surprised that the Garen Golem was introduced a little early into the game, but he gave just the right level of difficulty in the Master Rank he was introduced in. Luna Garen is my favourite out of the 4. His fight isn't as flashy as I predicted, but it's still fun, plus I love his armor and weapon designs. Now, the Malzeno acts as more of a gatekeep boss for the more challenging fights in the endgame, but he still does his role as the flagship for this DLC tremendously. Simply put, the stacked roster that we got for this expansion, in my opinion, eclipses the roster that we got for Iceborne, and that's Iceborne before the title updates. Now I'm going to move on to the next point that's kinda more relatable to me and how I play. I'm not really sure if this point will feel the same to any of you watching this video since there's a million ways to play Monster Hunter, but I want to talk about the new switch skills that are introduced and of course the skill swap mechanic. Now do keep in mind I mainly use the dual blades throughout my playthrough of Sunbreak, so I apologize if I can't really go through all the remaining 13 weapon types in detail, but for right now I just want to point out just how the newly introduced skills and the swap system has been a complete joy to use. I typically focus on a more fast-paced, counter-heavy playstyle, so the dual blades gave me a perfect setup to use. And I mainly focus on using the evade extender and wirebug whisper skill to keep the movement going. Using the old switch skills like Demon Flight and the Shrouded Vault is utterly fun to use, for me at least, and now with even more switch skills to use, there is just so much more to add with this simple playstyle. Offensive moves like the Spiral Slash, literally taken out from Generations Ultimate, is absolutely wild with the amount of consistent damage that you do. And the new utility move which you restore the sharpness of your dual blades with the Iron Shine Silk actually amazes me when I actually get around to using it more frequently. With these, you're left with having a ton of experimenting to do, plus mix and matching with whatever skills suit your playstyle. And to be fair, even if I'm speaking for the dual blades that I'm focusing on, this rule does apply to the rest of the weapon types as well. And I cannot leave this particular point out. With every skill swap that you do, you perform an evade. Now try and imagine my shock when this swap evade can also be affected with the evade extender skill. Half the time, I can barely keep track as to where I am with the amount of area I cover whilst evading. It is honestly mental. At first, I rarely get to swap whichever skills I have on my set, but by the end of my playthrough I was loving what this mechanic has to offer. Plus the total maneuverability it gives is just a treat. And that's it so far. Obviously there is a lot more to talk about with regards to this expansion. Really, I've only ever talked about the first points that come to my mind with my own experiences when playing Sunbreak for the past week. I haven't even talked through the actual storyline for the DLC, which is very linear even for a Monster Hunter game, but it does its job fairly well in moving the narrative forward. And I've only skimmed through the follow quest system, which definitely deserves its praises in a more in-depth manner. But in conclusion, we are not done with Sunbreak just yet. There is still the title updates to look forward to in August, and yes, I will try to get my Let's Play for this DLC up to date before the title updates happen. And with that in mind, please comment down below your thoughts and opinions with the DLC 1 week after its release, and I shall see you later.